We're going to show a very short film, and then we'll bring on Larry Ellison. So it's only a minute. Larry Ellison. Good to see you. Thank you for coming. This is the interview I'm most excited about.
That was a question?
Yes, there was. Talk a little bit about America's Cup. We'll start with that.
Well, it's the oldest trophy in international sports. It dates back to 1851, when Queen Victoria's husband decided to have an industrial fair in England. And back in the 1850s, the way you moved products around the world was by sailing ship. And they decided to display the latest and greatest technologies. And they invited all the countries from around the world to send their fastest sailing boats. And only one country decided to challenge the Brits, and that was the United States. They sent the schooner America to race, and we raced 13 British ships around the Isle of Wight. And the cup is named after not the Americas, but the first boat that won it, the America, which was sponsored by the New York Yacht Club. And since that time, since the 1850s, 6 teams have won the cup. So in 160 years, only 6 teams have won, and it's the most difficult trophy to win. I tried 3 times and didn't make it the first 2, but got, made it the third time. Made it the third time. We won in Spain a couple years ago, and we defend in San Francisco next year.
Next year, and the prospects?
I don't know. We're racing against a lot of really great teams, including Team New Zealand. The French have a team. The Italians have a team. So there are lots and lots of teams we have to beat, but we think we'll be competitive.
Anything technologically different that you're putting forth?
Well, these boats are really, it's extreme sailing. So it's not traditional sailing. It's not the kind of boat you'd want to take your family out and teach.
I noticed. I didn't want to do it.
Teach your kids how to sail. It's not the ideal. It's not, and if you're just learning how to sail, it's not the ideal boat to do that either. Even the small ones, the 45-footers, will go about 40 miles an hour. And they, occasionally they're not stable. They're designed to be unstable, and that's what allows them to go so fast. And every once in a while, if you make a mistake, they just leap into the air and turn upside down.
I saw that. That was disturbing.
And they fall on top of you, which is a bad feeling. So you're upside down, and then the boat falls on you. So it can be dangerous.
Yes.
Every time I'm on one of these boats, there's some little injury. Both, Russell Coutts and I are the 2 oldest guys on the team that actually race these boats. And I know Russell has a masseuse. I just found out that Russell has a masseuse every night after sailing. I think that's a very good idea because everything hurts.
And you're going to be in this race next year.
I'm going to be in the race. I'm going to be on the boat.
So let's talk about the idea of being around. You've been a CEO of Oracle since 1977.
I have.
So you've been probably the longest running tech CEO in Silicon Valley's history. Let's talk a little bit about sweep of that, because it's difficult to do. It's difficult to stick around. It's difficult to be successful that long. You kind of had the sweep of what's happened. I want to sort of get your assessment from a larger point of view, where you think Silicon Valley is now. You've said various things at various points. At one point you thought innovation was mature. think that was a couple of years ago.
I thought innovation was slowing down. Yeah.
Slowing down.
Yeah.
Has that changed for you? What is the big picture for you right now?
No, I think the internet was kind of the last big change. I mean, and now the internet is maturing. I mean, a lot of things have happened. You know, they don't call it the internet anymore. They call it cloud computing. But the internet, a long time ago, I was talking about this thing called network computers.
Right.
And the whole idea, the interesting thing about the internet, when it first came out, the primary device attached to the internet was a personal computer. And that made the internet very different than all of our other networks. Virtually every network we have, the water network, the telephone network, the electric power network, has enormously complex components that are hidden from consumers. And the consumers have rather simple devices that then access these enormously complex networks. The PC network was very different. The PC network had this enormously complex device called the personal computer that was attached to a very complex network. So there was complexity on both sides of the network. With the internet, that had the potential to change, where we could take all of the complexity, or begin to start taking all the complexity out of the end user devices and move that complexity back into the network, and then supply consumers with a very, very simple device. And you know, when I initially started talking about this, which was almost 20 years ago, called that the network computer.
The simple network.
Yeah, network computer. And which was an interesting idea, but not so easy to actually pull off. It's taken a long, long time for the technologies to mature, and the software and the hardware technology to mature to where the internet has become just that. Enormously complex on one side, but on the consumer side, very, very simple. Smartphones, tablets, a web browser on your personal computer. So we've migrated the complexity off the desktop, away from the PC, and moved all that complexity back into internet servers. And that was renamed, then that's been recast now as, quote, cloud computing, which is a very interesting branding. It's very charismatic. Yeah, and I'm no longer resisting the name. We call it whatever you want.
Why did you resist the name? Because it sort of got you started with the idea that you weren't interested in cloud computing. Is that a falsehood, or?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well, let me see. I'm not interested in cloud computing. I started NetSuite. NetSuite was my idea. I called up Evan Goldberg, and said, okay, we're going to do ERP on the internet, as software as a service.
Right.
6 months later, Mark Benioff, finding out what NetSuite was doing, kind of copied it, and
although he had
did it in a very narrow. Mark's here, and he can comment. And if I'm making this up, NetSuite started 6 months before. He found out what Evan was doing. Evan's a good friend of his, and he said, that's a great idea, but rather than doing SAP software as a service, why not just try to replicate Siebel and just do Salesforce automation? So those are the two, those are the two earliest examples of SaaS. So do I really?
He said you were a great inspiration to him, just so you know, just a second ago. But go ahead.
I'm flattered.
Okay.
I like Mark. I think he's done a brilliant job with Salesforce.com. I think he's done a great job. I've always believed, when I talked about the network computer, Oracle's slogan was, the internet changes everything. What I objected to was suddenly said, there's this incredibly new thing, it's called cloud computing. And then everyone said, a 10-year-old company or 15-year-old company like Salesforce.com said, yeah, that's us. And but long before there was a word called, it was called cloud computing. There was a Salesforce.com, and there was a NetSuite, and there were all of these other things, and they kind of adopted this this umbrella term, cloud computing, and everyone said that's incredibly new. Well, I mean, how could it be incredibly new? They've been doing it for a decade.
So it's a branding issue.
So it was just that people were saying cloud computing is something totally new and different, when it actually has just been a continuous evolution from the internet, as the internet has matured, from having a network with complex devices to network with simple devices. Where applications used to run on your desktop, now applications run on internet servers instead.
Right.
where you used to maybe buy the application, now you can rent it, or you can buy it for 99 cents across the net. Doesn't really make any difference. But it really is, it all began with the internet. And it all began as complexity started migrating off the desktop and into the network. It all was easy to predict because every network in the world has the same architecture. The electric network, the electricity, electrical power grid is enormously complicated, but it's just a simple plug. Right. You plug in to use it, and you plug in your blender or your television or what have you. So that complexity is hidden from the user. As the computer networks matured, inevitably, they were destined to move the complexity off the desktop. And I said the PC is a ridiculous device. You shouldn't have to back this thing up. You shouldn't have to load these applications. You shouldn't have files that exist on your PCs except as a cache. That should all be on internet servers. What if this thing breaks? What if you lose it? There's a much better model. This was all extremely easy to predict.
Right.
And it wasn't suddenly because you suddenly started calling it, and that's what I objected to. Someone said, oh my God, we just invented cloud computing. No, cloud computing has been a continuous step-by-step evolution.
So
it began with
cloud computing is the internet. You just don't like the word.
Well, I actually like the word. Right. I like the word because I objected to some people saying it was new. I like the word because it's a charismatic brand for kind of the next generation of computing. It gets people's attention, and people say, cloud computing, I need to be doing that. People are talking about it. It seems to be, again, it seems to have some significant benefits. I need to understand what this thing is, and I need to rethink my data center strategy and exploit this next generation of technology. And people do need to simplify their existing data centers and deliver services in a much simpler way to their captive end user base.
So let's talk, we're going to talk about Oracle in particular in a second, but I want to talk about this idea of where Silicon Valley is in that. Since cloud computing is you're saying it's not new, it's a continuation of what's been happening. How do you look at innovation in Silicon, given how long you've worked in it? Where do you see the cycle right now? Or is it in a cycle, or? Well,
again, I mean, the big thing was the internet. And we're seeing the impact of the internet. Now, it used to be, I mean, right now our our lives are on the internet.
Right.
Or if you prefer, on Facebook or just social. I mean, for a very, very long time, we know how much you earn, how much you have in your bank account, what clothes you recently bought, because we had all your credit records. So we had a credit database for pretty much everyone, every creditworthy person on the planet Earth for a very long time. That was the single most important database in the world, is the credit database. It just tracked every creditworthy consumer on Earth and tracked everything they were doing. Now we can track not only what products you're buying, but what you're saying about those products after you buy them.
Right.
We know who your friends are. We know what you're saying to your friends. We know your friends' friends. So when we launch a product, we can actually look at a Twitter feed or a Facebook feed and know what you're saying about our product. And if you're a brand manager, we can immediately respond. We can actually take corrective action if we've made some mistake. So we suddenly have consumers instrumented by because they're willing to share the details.
Instrumented. You instrument.
They self-instrument. Consumers just tell us everything about themselves. Before, it was only when you used your credit cards. Now, every time you make a comment, every time you tweet, every time you join a special interest group on Facebook, every time you go to a website, all of this stuff, every time you search. We have all of this detail of people's lives online, which allows us to allows those companies to who care about monitoring this, allows us to market things and sell things and service the consumers in a much more insightful and informed way.
How do you look at this? Are you on Facebook?
I am on Facebook.
Do you use it?
I haven't used it in a long time. In fact, when I told Mark Zuckerberg, when I first met Mark Zuckerberg, I told him that for about 3 months, I was kind of obsessed with Facebook. I was on there all the time.
What were you doing?
Well, making friends, meeting people I otherwise would never meet,
Okay.
You know, telling them what I had for breakfast, which is extremely interesting. I would find out what they had for breakfast, which was not as interesting. I found just in general, my breakfasts were more interesting than my friend's breakfast. It was,
Okay.
you know, and that in itself is a big thing.
Okay.
So after
eat
about
for
3 months, of this, I finally stopped. But I was, you know, I mean, I have friends in Serbia and all over the nothing. I mean, I love Serbia. I have friends in Belgrade and all over the world. And it was very interesting. Now, I try to use these social networks and I try to use all of these technologies just so I'm aware of what's going on and what's being done with our database, with our technology, and what's happening. And when you use these things, you get, again, a certain degree of insight of what is possible today that wasn't possible before Facebook.
Research. What did you tell Zuckerberg? You were going to say. What did you say to him?
I told him I was okay now, that I'm no longer spending my entire life on Facebook, but you know, that after 3 months I'd recovered. No, I told him I thought it was a brilliant piece of technology, and I thought it was a world-changing piece of technology.
So why was that? When you just bought a company, which we'll talk about in a second,
Right.
which is a social marketing company. I want to get an idea of why you did that. Oracle did that. Do you think that's the most important? You said internet was the most important.
Yeah, without the internet,
So
there's no Facebook.
Do you
Without
see
the
anything
internet,
else that big or coming, or is it over? Or
well,
is it...
I mean, Google search was very big. I mean, the fact that they've not that there's Alta Vista before Google, but Google, or more precisely Overture, figured out how to monetize search, and they figured out how to make money with search. And the money they make with search then allows them to, thoroughly index and provide a very high quality, very fast service for searching all aspects of the internet. A lot of people where they don't make money.
Right.
So they take this one piece where they make a fortune, and then they build all of these other services.
Right.
So that was so Google's a very important company. Obviously, Facebook is arguably, potentially, an even more important company. Exactly how they monetize all of this remains to be seen. I mean, clearly there's a huge advertising play, but there's more. What we're doing, what we bought Vitru, and why I think Salesforce is going to buy Buddy Media, and et cetera, et cetera. It was exactly what I said. If you are selling, Salesforce is a company that's all about automating sales forces, or at an even higher level, making selling more efficient. Now, we can argue whether they do that or not, but that's the highest level. That's what people want to do, is make selling more efficient.
But that's their goal.
That's their goal. And that would be their value proposition, that we make your sales force more efficient, therefore you sell more.
Okay.
And companies want to sell more. The more we know about consumers, the more, so consumers now, companies want to advertise on Facebook. They want to roll out their products on Facebook. They want to know what people are saying about their products on Facebook. So it's a combination of proactive marketing on Facebook, and also analyzing the data streams from Facebook and from Twitter and Google Plus and other places. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So modern marketing is, where else? I mean, people used to have surveys. They used to call up and, do you use Tide? Do you what do you think of Nike? What do you do? You don't have to do that anymore.
Right.
Instead, we just use Hadoop and process these feeds, and then we throw it into an Oracle database, and we do, and process it with a bunch of analytics. So this is an
important company for you to have for your company.
Well, it's an important new way of understanding consumer behavior.
Right. Did you look at Buddy Media also?
We did.
And?
We bought the one we wanted.
Okay. All right. Obviously. Again, just before I finish and start talking about Oracle in particular, but do you see any other big innovation coming, or do you feel that a lot of people talk about the end of Silicon Valley, the end of innovation? Do you imagine that?
Well, it's all about creative destruction, right? I mean, some companies, for a long time, I've understood you either move forward or you die. It was Woody Allen's great line about relationships. Relationships like a shark. It either has to move forward or it dies.
Right.
And that's true of a company. If you don't keep your technology current, if you're not monitoring what is possible today that wasn't possible yesterday because of certain technical innovations, then someone's going to beat you to the punch. Someone's going to get ahead of you, and you're going to lose your customers to some competitor. So I think we see a lot of companies in Silicon Valley under stress. But for every company that's under stress, there's a Facebook or a Splunk or somebody else. Facebook is a gigantic, once in a decade event. But there are a lot of other companies that have come along and are doing interesting things.
Are there any areas that you think are particularly promising or hyped, either way, or overhyped?
Well, well, the promising ones are always hyped, right? I mean, you can be promising. I mean, cloud computing, I thought cloud computing was ridiculously hyped and very promising at the same time. Sometimes the most promising technologies are the ones that get the most attention, and then people claim they're even more important than they're actually very important, but not as important as everyone says. I mean, people said, well, the PC is going to replace the mainframe. Well, IBM still does a big business, and PCs are more important than mainframes. But I would argue in short order, if not already, smartphones and tablets will be much more important than PCs.
Right.
For the first time in our industry, the consumer part of the IT industry is bigger than the enterprise part, the corporate part. I mean, that's an amazing event because, I mean, corporate continues to grow. But with the advent of smartphones and the incredible rise of Apple, we see where consumer information processing is a larger business, a larger segment of our business than.
So what is Oracle now then? I mean, the run has been astonishing, this long run. But what are you now then? Are you a consumer business, or most people think of you as the enterprise business?
No, we're definitely not a consumer business, but we sell to people who are in the consumer business.
Right.
I mean, Apple's a big customer of ours. I mean, we have a lot. We have lots and lots of customers who are in the consumer business. So I mean, obviously, all the phone companies. We are by far the most popular provider of automation systems to the phone companies all over the world, whether it's AT&T or Verizon. I mean, it's overwhelmingly us. It's not IBM. Our big competitor in that space is IBM, and we're growing much faster than they are. And if you look at where we've competed with, where we compete with IBM. They used to be #1 in database. We're now #1 in database. They used to be #1 in middleware. We're now #1 in middleware. I argue that they're #1 in servers right now, in high-end servers, and with our new Exadata machines and Exalogic machines, I argue it'll be a couple years and we'll pass them in high-end servers.
So what do you do? You like being #1. I got that. What do you do now all day? I asked this question of Steve. What is your role at Oracle?
Well, I've run engineering since day one at Oracle, and I still run engineering. I mean, it's not like, I mean, we spent $5 billion in R&D, but if there are 3 people kind of together, and 3 of us run Oracle. I run engineering. Mark Hurd runs the fields, sales, marketing, consulting, and Safra Katz runs the back office,
Right.
Accounting, legal, and so we what I do every day is I look at product plans and everything from the introduction of the Exadata database machine to our most recent new product, which is the Exalytics all in-memory database machine. So
you're the product guy at Oracle.
I'm the product guy.
And what does that entail? What is how does that manifest?
I spend a lot of times meeting with engineers. I mean, we made a decision a while ago to go in the hardware business, and we were looking at that was a big decision, by the way.
Right, it is.
Long before we bought Sun, we decided to build this machine, this database machine, and we thought that data centers were unnecessarily complex. Because they're all different. We thought the guys who were building data centers were integrating pieces that were too small. In other words, they were buying disk drives from EMC and networks from Cisco and servers from IBM, let's say, and then run an Oracle database running on IBM AIX, all running under VMware. And we said, well, that's interesting. And different people were doing different things, and they're putting all these separate pieces together. We said, I'll tell you what, why don't we'll do all of it. We'll give you the disk drives, we'll give you the network, we'll give you the database servers, we'll give you the virtual machine, we'll give you the database, we'll give you the operating system, and we'll sell you this one building block that you can plug into your data center. And if we do it all, we can make it much more reliable, much lower cost. And in fact, it's the Apple model. Mm-hmm. Rather than, Apple is the system integrator. They did the iPhone, they did the hardware, they did the software, they did the associated online service. Mm-hmm. We're trying to do the same thing for the data center that Apple did, for the consumer, which is to give them large building blocks whereby they can build their data center. So Exadata includes disk storage, it includes an InfiniBand network, it includes database servers and all the software.
Has the hardware part been more difficult? Talk about the integration with Sun and.
Well, that's really funny because I read all these articles which I tend not to comment on. Maybe I should start tweeting.
I wish you would.
I'm probably on June 6th. I'm going to do my first tweet.
Good.
So.
Go crazy,
Sun
Larry.
has been by far our most profitable acquisition already. Sun's already paid for itself.
Okay, how so?
We're making so much money. Remember, we only paid $5.5 billion for Sun net of cash. Mm-hmm. And it is enormously profitable already. Now, people said, oh, but your hardware business is going down. Well, yeah, the unprofitable part of it we're getting out of. Mm-hmm. So we used to sell other people's disk drives, and we used to bid on contracts mm-hmm. where we lost money. Our margins, our margins now in our hardware business are probably the highest margins of anyone in the server business. Mm-hmm. Now, the business has dropped maybe 20% in terms of top line, mm-hmm. but it's up by a factor of 5 in terms of profit. Mm-hmm. And next year it'll start growing again. And is hardware harder than the rest? Now, hardware is so easy because most of hardware is software. Mm-hmm. If you look at an iPhone, it is beautiful, and it's beautiful to look at, and it's beautiful, but 98% of the complexity is software, and arguably some of the chip technology. Mm-hmm. So there are two real difficult pieces of the technology. There's the silicon, the flash. Samsung making the flash, and the microprocessor by ARM, and all of this. There's some complexity in fabricating those chips. Mm-hmm. Which we don't, we design chips. We design the Spark chip, so we have a big chip design team. But it's almost all software. So Sun was 90% software. So people say, God, you know nothing about the hardware business. Well, the hardware business is 90% software. I don't know what you're talking about. I started.
That would be a good tweet. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'll probably, we're announcing on June 6th the kind of general availability of the Oracle Cloud and.
Any more insight to what you're announcing?
Well, we're announcing platform as a service, the database service and the Java service and a series of applications. All of the Fusion applications are general availability, so human resources right. and accounting and procurement and all of those things on top of some of our acquisitions to lay over talent management right now, but Fusion sales automations, Fusion marketing. So for the first time, you're going to have the complete ERP and CRM suite available on the cloud. And the technology that it's based on is our Exadata and Exalogic machines, and the customers will be running in their own VM, which is a very interesting advantage because not only is that much more secure than multi-tenancy, which is a 20-year-old technology, virtualization is much more modern technology. But the nice thing is you don't have to upgrade. When you're a multi-tenant customer, you get the new version of software when the vendor tells you you're going to get it. Right. They control it. If you're in your own VM, your data is not commingled with other customers, and you upgrade when you want to. So it's more secure. You have more control. It's a much more, we think, a much more modern version of the cloud. We have a lot in common in that way with Amazon, as opposed to some of the SaaS vendors. So it's both platform as a service and the most complete and integrated suite of applications of any application provider.
You answered the question. That was unlike Tim Cook, who would tell me nothing last night about their thing next week. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the patent situation. The recent case with Google, you had some legal difficulties with HP, some with SAP, I believe. I think that's all of them.
SAP?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which one would you like to discuss?
Well, none of them.
None of them. Okay.
So they're all being litigated right now. So, by the way, I wouldn't describe it as a patent case. It is primarily. Everyone. It's certainly been described in the press as a patent case, but it's really a copyright case.
Right.
And so it's really focused on the copyrights. And
are you going to appeal this last decision?
We won on infringement. So the jury found that Google infringed on our copyrights. So I'm going to just stop right there and not talk about that. But, I really don't want to go into a lot of detail. Right. But the the important part of that case is about copyrights and copyrightability of software. And again, when litigation is over, I'll be happy to talk about.
But it's ongoing because you win a large part of it.
It is ongoing.
Ongoing, and with HP.
And the jury, HP sued us when we hired Mark Hurd.
Mm-hmm. I remember that story.
HP sued us when we said we are not going to port new versions of our software on Titanium. And the first thing that we won't port onto Titanium comes out next year.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's the latest version of our database, which comes out either December this year or January of next year. And they said.
And you're keeping Mark Hurd, so.
We're keeping Mark Hurd, and yeah, HP says we have a contract. We agreed. Yes, we have a contractual obligation to port Titanium, and we don't think that's true. Mm-hmm. So we're going to court, and the judge will decide.
Do you imagine a better relationship with AP? You said some things about them.
Well, can I imagine a better relationship? I think now that Meg Whitman's CEO, I like Meg.
That's what I mean.
You remember Leo Apotheker was at HP. Was at SAP. Well, yeah, thief.
Yeah.
Remember SAP pleaded guilty to criminal theft of our software. Let me be clear. I'm not accusing SAP of anything. I'm saying, what did SAP do? SAP said, did you engage in criminal behavior and steal lots of Oracle software? Yes. Okay. That's SAP. Who was CEO when you were doing all this criminal stuff? Leo. Okay.
Leo, but go ahead.
Leo. I'm not going to call him Leo.
Okay.
Leo. Yeah. So, but we fired that idiot. I know, but HP hired him. So let me get this straight.
Oh, tweet that too, but go ahead.
You're going to fire Mark Hurd and hire Leo? Mm-hmm. This is what you think this is a good idea? Mm-hmm. And I think what I said at the time was this was the best idea since the Apple board fired Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
It was really, really brilliant.
Yeah. You held back there.
And in fact, it's funny because when they 9 months later, when HP said, "Whoops," I think that might have been a mistake. I mean, I almost I tweeted, "Told ya."
Yeah. So Meg, which is just pronounced Meg, you get along better with? Meg.
I wish Meg nothing but the best. It's a big company. It's a lot of work. I like HP. HP is an icon. I think it's those of us who are raised here in the Valley, have had our career here in the Valley, think of Bill Hewlett and David Packard as role models. Where we would love to be half as good as they were. Mm-hmm. And HP has lots of great people working at HP. But when they brought in Leo, and then just to make things, we subpoenaed him for the SAP trial, and then he was on the lam.
Okay.
You know, I mean, he was, you know, where's Leo? Leo. Either one of them. We'll take either one of them. Want one of those two guys to testify. The criminal. Again, stealing our software. And the HP board sent him, you know, they sent him to Bolivia to talk to customers. And then they sent him, you know, to Mongolia to talk to customers. Just out of reach of that federal subpoena. You know, and it's kind of bothered us. But again, you know, they should have left, you know, but actually the board finally figured out, you know, should have left Leo in Mongolia.
Right.
Because when he came to California, it really got bad.
Right. Okay.
Maybe we'll get out of the PC business, but then again, maybe not.
What do you think they should do?
Why are you telling me this? Well, I just was thinking about it. Okay, all right, all right.
What do you think they should do?
You want me to give
Yes,
HP
Meg.
advice?
Please
I think, bless their
Get
hearts.
rid of the idiot, which they did.
Well, I think Meg was a big improvement, and again, I wish her luck. But again, I'm focused on running Oracle. I mean, I got you know.
You take no pleasure.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, I like her, and I hope she does well for the benefit of HP's customers and employees and everybody else.
So last, before we go and we get some questions, what keeps you going? Good God.
Red Bull, just the. Well, I mean, this is going to sound really corny, but you know, kind of life's a journey, and I think we're all curious about each other and about ourselves, and it's a journey of discovery about our own limits, and you know, I really am fascinated by people. I really, you know, I mean, and I'm fascinated by technology and what's, you know, what can be done with technology, and to constantly test limits, the performance limits of the computers that we build, the limits of our company, our company's ability to grow and compete and beat IBM. So I enjoy the competition. I enjoy the process again of learning through, you know, as we compete, learning as we take advantage and exploit these technology to solve customer problems. The whole thing is just fascinating. I don't know what I would do if I retired. You know, when sailing, the problem is, I mean, I confess, when I go sailing, I look around. Anyone want to race? You know,
Right.
I just like competing as opposed to, you know, just going out and quietly watching the sunset.
What is the greatest misconception about you, or something people don't know?
Greatest misconception.
Or something
about me.
people don't know?
I play classical guitar. I don't know. No one knows that. I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
Is your image that's out there the image of who you are? Kind of this heightened...
I'm not.
You've got an image.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's okay. I really should never talk about myself, but it's a very clever question.
I'm clever.
You are clever. And that's a problem. So, yeah, frequently I'll be interviewing somebody or in a meeting with somebody, and after about 15 minutes, they kind of interrupt me midstream, and they say, "Oh my God, you're nothing like I thought you'd be." And I said, "Well, it's a very low bar, you know." You know, I didn't start, you know, bite the head off a small animal during the meeting. So seems nice to me.
Okay. Okay, we're going to get to some... All right, Larry Ellison does not bite the head off small animals. We've got rid of that myth. We're going to do some questions, and then we're going to go to this fantastic panel, which Larry has agreed to participate with. So let's try to keep them quick. Go.
Okay, great. Hi, Larry Crawford, Delpret from IDC. Congratulations on what you've done remaking Oracle over the last 20 years. Going forward, can you talk a little bit about what is the next mountain for Oracle to climb? I mean, you talked about competing a lot with IBM, but you don't have the same services business. Is the consumer cloud hold something for you? You talked a little bit about analytics. I'm just curious about that next challenge for Oracle.
Okay, we are not competing with IBM in the services business, and
Understood.
explicitly just on the product side of things.
Sure.
So as services becomes more and more important inside of IBM, And I'm not sure I would say they're de-emphasizing their product business, but again, it's now no longer, it's the tail and the services business is the dog. So we are bigger than IBM was bigger than us in software. We're now a bigger software company than IBM. We beat them in database, we beat them in middleware, and we think we can beat them in servers. And that's the next thing for us to do is beat them in high-end servers. For Exadata, Exalogic, Exalytics to beat IBM P-Series. So that's one of our big competitors. Our other really big competitor is SAP. And the interesting thing about SAP, well, we're launching all of our cloud applications, all these Fusion applications, a complete rewrite of ERP and CRM, all in Java and Web 2.0, and they're all modernized. SAP hasn't even begun to rewrite their applications. So we think there's a huge opportunity to knock off IBM on the product side, on their, if you will, in servers and a few other software areas. Analytics, we compete with IBM. We think we knocked them off in analytics, and also SAP's franchise in ERP is really at risk. They announced at their last conference they'll have nothing new until 2020. They haven't. I mean, I'm just quoting them. They're not doing anything till 2020. Yeah, they're buying Ariba and they bought SuccessFactors, but their business is ERP. They've got all. They're the #1 company in the world in ERP, and they have nothing for the cloud for at least the next 8 years, and I'd argue maybe the next 10, 12 years. So we're going to have the next 8 years by ourselves with high-end ERP against SAP. So I think that we have huge opportunity to beat IBM in the infrastructure area and the platform area, and beat SAP in the cloud area.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, Rolf Winkler from the Wall Street Journal. I had a question about your apps business. I guess you've built a phenomenon, it generates phenomenal cash flows, and a lot of people, it's done so a lot by locking in customers to older software and raising maintenance fees a lot year after year.
That's not true. But wait, let me just stop you. We do not raise maintenance fees a lot year after year after year. People buy more software and they pay the same maintenance fees that they always pay.
I guess the point Mark Andreessen, for instance, has famously said that none of the startups that work with Andreessen Horowitz run Oracle. And I guess I'm wondering, over time...
Well, I know. We just have to rely on General Electric and AT&T and Verizon.
I'm saying if the next generation of companies isn't running Oracle...
Which of the Andreessen Horowitz companies have we lost? Well, anyway, they run on that. By the way, they run on NetSuite.
Generation of large companies isn't going to run Oracle. Does that end up causing your business to shrink dramatically over time?
Well, again, no, our business isn't shrinking. It's growing, and it's growing rapidly. And we have all of our applications in the cloud starting June 6th. It took us 6-7 years to rewrite all this stuff for the cloud. Okay. Our major competitor, SAP, didn't do that. So if you look at the market in total, you have two very large companies, SAP and Oracle, in applications, and then a bunch of smaller...
Salesforce and Workday, what about those guys?
Well, it's going to be very interesting to monitor Workday. We compete with Workday all the time, and we beat Workday all the time. So in the cloud. Our Fusion HCM has been out for a while. Again, these are much smaller companies. But we are fully in the cloud come June 6th with a fully integrated suite. So I expect Salesforce will continue to grow. I expect we will be bigger. We're around in pure SaaS. No hosting, nothing else, but pure SaaS. We're around $1 billion right now. We're round numbers.
Sorry,
about $1 billion. But SAP, everyone. I mean, what are they going to do? If we take share from SAP in ERP, Salesforce doesn't do ERP. Workday has got very, very primitive. Let me give you a couple words on Workday. They don't use a database. They use an object store, so they can't really do reporting. And they use Flash as a user interface. So they can't run on iPhones or iPads. Besides that, they're great.
All right, on that note, over here.
So I'm not worried about Workday. I do think Salesforce has built a franchise over a long period of time, and they're going to be a formidable competitor in their space. I don't think Workday is. Whenever we have a head-to-head with Workday in the cloud, our human resources versus their human resources, we almost always win. And that's before we're fully launched. So I'm not worried about them. Their product's too immature and they're too small and frail. I'm not SAP. And they made horrible architectural mistakes. Horrible. No database.
Got it.
Mark uses a really good database. Salesforce uses a really good database. They use Oracle. And NetSuite uses a really good database, amazingly good database. They use Oracle. And they use really good middleware. You know what they use? They use Oracle.
All right, we're going to get to the next question.
Workday.
All right.
So your question was, are we a loser? No.
Okay. Fantastic. Ralph.
Okay.
Ralph. That's how it's done. Go ahead.
I get to go next. Hi, Kevin.
Hi,
All right,
nice to
let's
meet you.
keep them quick because we've got to get to another.
Real quick question. I've been a fan of the America's Cup since Ted Turner won it back a long time ago, and I'm just curious, what is about this event for guys like you that you grab onto it and you can't let go, and what do I have to do to go sailing with you?
Did you just see this last one over Workday, for crap's sake? Go ahead.
I won. I had a boat called Sayonara, which I campaigned as an amateur sailor. I drove the boat to 5 consecutive world championships at the highest level. And when you are a good amateur, you want to try racing against the pros, which I did. They're way better than the amateurs. So it was the logical next step. It really was. I've been a competitive sailor for a very, very long time. I've been very successful as a competitive sailor. So I decided to find out how good this Russell Coutts guy is. You know what I found out? He's really good. Way better than me. Thank you.
Make them quick. I'm sorry
Yeah.
to make them quick.
Quick question. Hope the answer is quick too. Medicine and health. What are you doing personally and commercially and philanthropically?
I have a medical foundation called very creatively, the Ellison Medical Foundation. I really worked on that name for a long time, Esther. And we are focused on diseases related to aging. I mean, for obvious reasons. Just not that as young as Mark, you know. But there are cancer. There are a lot of diseases that we become more vulnerable to as we get older. Cancer is the most famous of them, but there's Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. There are any number of diseases that are related to aging, and what we're trying to understand is doing primary research on exactly what are the different mechanisms of aging, how they and how they increase the likelihood that you will get those diseases. So we do both primary research and then applied research on specific diseases. I've spent round numbers $1 billion, supporting that. The Oracle, we have a very large health sciences practice. I've got inside of Oracle, I swear I never would be involved with another startup ever again in my entire life. And I broke that when we recently started a company where we are doing simulation, computational molecular dynamics. We're simulating quantum mechanics. In small molecules where we're doing drug design. Basically, we're using computers, like you use computers to design an airplane wing via computational fluid dynamics, a bunch of partial differential equations. We're basically building chemical simulators so we can design and test drugs as therapeutics for cancer and other diseases. And that is both. That's in Moscow, where the physicists are in Moscow, and the researchers are split between Stanford University and Israel. So it's something that's fascinated me my entire life. Biological systems are enormously complex, and every year we understand them a little bit better, and there are opportunities to be much more efficient in molecular design if we can do it on computers rather than doing it in a wet lab. And that's what I've been working on.
Okay, we're going to be very quick. I think we probably have only time for one more.
Hey, Larry. Dan Simon with CNN. Tim Cook mentioned the possibility of someday manufacturing Apple products in the United States. What responsibility does Silicon Valley have to spur greater economic development for the country? What advice would you have for Obama, and what do you think of his tenure so far?
That's worse than, you know, why am I such a misunderstood person? We actually do a lot of high-end manufacturing in Hillsboro, Oregon, and we are bringing back manufacturing to the United States for a lot of reasons. One of which is that most of the cost associated with building hardware are buying the parts as opposed to the labor, and in high-end systems, a lot of this very, very skilled. It's sometimes easier to find the right engineering skills in the United States for some things than you can find them, let's say, in China. However, having said that, I had a long conversation with Steve Jobs why it's difficult to bring things back is because a lot of the really good manufacturing engineers are not here in the United States anymore. We have a real scarcity of manufacturing. Manufacturing engineering is a specific engineering discipline where there's a terrible shortage. My advice to President Obama, and I've given it to him and so did Steve Jobs when we met with the president, is we have got to have a more balanced immigration policy. Immigration is a good thing, but we need a balanced immigration policy. Applauded. We are a nation of immigrants. You know, my parents came here. But we need to embrace people with certain skills that are not readily available here in the United States. We need to encourage engineers, mathematicians, scientists, doctors who are trained in the United States to stay in the United States, to start their practice in the United States, to get jobs in the United States, to buy houses and cars and start businesses in the United States, rather than sending them back to China or India or Indonesia or Lithuania or wherever it might be and have them get jobs there and buy houses there and start their practices and their companies over there. It is simply madness that after Stanford University grants someone their PhD in mathematics, the next thing is they get a note from the federal government saying, get out. The reason we hire so many people overseas is not simply because we're trying to save money, because those skills are not available in the U.S. We need an enlightened immigration policy that invites these people that get their technical training in the United States to stay in the United States, work in the United States, and contribute to the U.S. economy, work for U.S. companies, or start their own company. It's just insane what we do.